Welcome to 6 Million Seeds. I'm Meryl Fury.
And I'm Carrie Bruno. We are healthcare professionals and co-creators of this podcast.
This episode is brought to you by The Beauty of Fall. In this week's episode, we invited two fellow members of Plant-Based Nutrition Movement's Board of Directors, Judi Bryan and John Gagliardi. These two are so fun to work with and both have interesting stories to share, so we knew we had to have them on the podcast. For Judi, following decades of eating the standard American diet and experiencing a number of health issues, it came as a rude awakening when she stumbled upon the Forks Over Knives documentary. After watching it, not only did she decide to follow the dietary recommendations in the film, but one by one, she saw her health issues vanish. This all caused a serious course correction in Judi's life. She was eager to find a way to reach out to others and help share the message about the benefits of whole food plant-based eating. This led her to get involved with the launch of Plant-Based Nutrition Movement in 2018. She remains an integral part of the organization and manages majority of the systems PBNM uses, both public-facing and internal. As for John, he brings a unique perspective and skill set to PBNM's mission of promoting a plant-based lifestyle. In his everyday role as a creative manager for a multi-channel retailer, he uses a variety of techniques to reach target audiences. In his past volunteer work as a consultant to nonprofits, including those that address the physical and mental health of children, he's seen the challenges and compromises these organizations face as they struggle to serve their constituents. As a competitive athlete, he's experienced firsthand the significant improvements that a plant-based diet can bring to his training and overall health. And as a parent, he wants to leave his children a cleaner planet in which they can live free of the chronic health conditions that are easily preventable just by eating a diet rich in whole foods.
Welcome to 6 Million Seeds. We are talking to Judi and John today. They are members of our board of directors at Plant-Based Nutrition Movement. This is so exciting. This is the first in a series of interviews that we're doing specifically with our board of directors so that we get to know a little bit more about them, and so do you. So great. Welcome, Judi and John.
Yeah, great to have you with us today.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us. This is great. My first podcast, so I hope I do well.
So let's start off with a question about a little bit about your background and how you. Let's look at how you ate when you were kids. We'll start with that. We'll go with Judi first.
Okay, well, I was raised by a single mom for the most part until I was about 8 years old. And then when she got married, well, she was working that whole time, and all through my growing up, she was working. So basically, breakfast was whatever cereal bowl she left out for me. Lunch, sometimes she made a sandwich, sometimes I made my own sandwich, and it was all, peanut butter and jelly. And I had a lot of that growing up. And then when I got older, it was a little bit more of the same: mashed potatoes and gravy, peas or corn, and whatever meat she had in the house. That was it. And there was not a lot of variety. It was always mashed potatoes and gravy, peas or corn, and some meat. And I was raised that way until, when I got married, I kind of did the same thing with my family, although I expanded it. So I had chili, and I had pizza and mock tacos that I raised my kids. We got a little bit away from the mashed potatoes and gravy, but it was still not good. So yeah, it was definitely not a good eating pattern anywhere along the line. And over the years, I started eating a lot more things like chips and fries and that kind of stuff getting added to the formula. So definitely not a plant-based healthy diet.
Right. So I'm going to ask you a quick question, and then we'll go on to John. But on an average, when you were growing up, how often would you go out to eat?
Very rarely. We didn't have any money. So yeah, it was whatever we had in the refrigerator was what we ate.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. Thank you. And John, how about you? How were you growing up with your food?
I learned to eat very quickly because I was the middle child of 7.
Oh, wow.
So I always joke, I say, what's the most common line at our dinner table was, "You gonna finish that?"
Yeah.
But similar to Judy, and my mother was kind of sensitive to spices, so there wasn't a tremendous amount of spices in the food, so it could be kind of bland. But she was German cooking for an Italian guy, so there was always a lot of pasta, and she would make a big pot of pasta, and nothing went to waste. So when she would buy chicken, all the stuff that was inside the chicken, it would have this little bag of the innards of the chicken.
Yeah.
That would go in the pasta sauce, and then we would fish that out and have that with dinner too. So nothing went to waste. But a lot of meat and potatoes, but usually vegetables, usually a salad. But for breakfast, it would be the sugary cereals with the little prize in the bottom, right? That
Yeah.
you'd love to get as a kid. And then for lunch, it would be Oscar Mayer bologna, right? Or Braunschweiger, if you like that kind of stuff.
Yes, yes.
So, my father's strategy was to put jardiniere, the spicy stuff, on all his food, so he didn't have to share it with the kid. So that was his strategy.
That's a good strategy.
Yeah. So as I financed my college education working at restaurants, so that exposed me to more different foods, a little different spices. But I would say I wasn't eating particularly healthy at that point. And you asked Judi about going out for a meal. Can you imagine the logistics of taking 7 kids out
No.
for a meal? We didn't go out very often. I mean, a trip to McDonald's was a real treat, but we would usually just do carry out. And even that, getting that order straight was a miracle.
Yeah.
Another big deal for us as a kid, I don't know if this is true for Judi, was getting the TV dinners. When on the rare occasions my parents went out and left us at home with a sitter or by ourselves, get all those TV dinners. Oh, that was a thrill. And you know how healthy those things are.
Right.
Yeah.
Awful. Yes.
Yeah. So that was, pretty much, I would say the typical standard Western diet growing up. Yeah.
So since you didn't obviously grow up eating plant-based, how did that transition happen? And when in your life did you decide to make that change, and how did that go?
Well,
Yeah,
for
that's
me-
go ahead, Judy. I'm sorry.
For me, it was, I had seen what that Crawford, I forget what his first name, Chris Crawford, whatever his name was, that did Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. And that introduced me to Joe Furman. And that was all the juicing kind of thing. So I thought, well, to tell you the truth, it was always about weight loss. It never even occurred to me that there could be a health component to it. It just didn't dawn on me. And I did do the juice thing for 60 days, which is a really long time to juice just straight juice. It killed me to be juicing this stuff, spending all this money on these beautiful fresh vegetables and fruits and all that fibrous stuff going away. I knew nothing at all about what that fiber was, other than it's supposed to help move things through your body, but I didn't understand gut microbes and none of that. I did that for the 60 days, and then about a year later, just happenstance, Forks Over Knives appeared on my feed for Netflix, and I watched that and was blown away.
Hmm.
So once I saw that, and that was basically about 7 years ago, and when I saw that, then I became just obsessed with this whole idea of changing my diet and everything. And I was I tend to be kind of a compulsive person. So once I saw that, it was like I saw that on a Friday. Saturday, I went through my kitchen and basically got rid of everything I owned, because everything that I owned was either it was boxed or packaged stuff that had well past expiration date, or it was in the fridge or freezer and was just toxic stuff. So I did that, and then late that day I went grocery shopping and started with brand new stuff, and I've been doing that ever since. So that was about, like I said, about 7 years ago.
Mhm.
Dramatic shift.
Yeah. Yeah,
the switch. It was like the switch went off.
Yeah.
yeah, right. How about you, John?
Yeah, mine is a little different. I think a lot of people that have switched to the plant-based diet did so because there was a health crisis, right? They were diabetic or something like that. And I think I come from it more from an angle similar to if you guys have seen, your viewers have seen Game Changers. I'm been I won't call myself an athlete, but I've tried to compete and stuff throughout my life. I was on the track and cross country teams in high school, and then I got into weightlifting and then, tennis and other stuff. So I tried to stay active, and I got back into running, and I found the nice thing about running is you can do it your entire life, and you just keep changing age groups. So, you can't win the race outright, but maybe you can win your age division. So I joke, I don't have to outrun you. I just have to outlive you. So, but as I aged, I found that it was harder. It required a lot more effort to make the same times, which obviously, you're not getting faster as you get older, unless you're just getting into running. But I also noticed that the more I exerted myself, I was just so sore at the next day. I was just popping ibuprofen like crazy, getting sinus infections all the time, congestion, sinus headaches. I was going through, I would buy the ibuprofen at Costco because they had the big jars because I was going through it so much. And then somebody named Dale Shrello, who was the wife of a former board member, Sherry Shrello, who we all know very well. And you're on these long runs, you get to talking. And he was telling me about how, he told me Sherry's story and about how he was plant-based. And he kept saying, you ought to try this. So I did give it a try for like 30 days. And it took about, I would say, 3 or 4 months before I really noticed that the soreness that I was getting anymore, which was, I'm guessing, was caused by inflammation from eating all the dairy.
Right.
I think the number one thing for me that I did was cutting out dairy. I think dairy was just so toxic for my body, just getting rid of that. So now I had to throw out all my ibuprofen because it had all expired. I just don't go through it anymore, right? I take it maybe 3 or 4 times a year now.
Right.
So it's just been a huge turnaround. And so I don't have to, so I can still train hard. I know my friends say, why don't you just slow down, just walk a little, just take it easier. And I'm just not wired that way. I just, I want to compete a little more. So I'm still doing races. I did a half marathon last month. I'm going to do a half Ironman triathlon, hopefully in September. So I'm still able to compete at a relatively high level. And I think it's all because of the diet. So that's been the turning point for me.
Sounds like you're an athlete to me.
Certainly compared to me, you are.
Identify from my
As long as it doesn't require any hand-eye coordination, then it's okay. Let me just throw that into the mix. I'm lost.
Really cool. So cool. So each of you have kids and or grandkids, is that right?
I have 2 children, one of whom is deceased,
Mhm.
and he left me with 2 beautiful grandchildren. And I have a daughter who is not married. She says she does single quite well, and she certainly doesn't have any children. So, and she's in Maine. She's not local here, so I don't get to see her very often.
Right.
John, how about you?
I have a son and a stepson, and neither of them are plant-based.
How does it work for your granddaughters,
Mhm.
Judy?
Yeah.
One of my granddaughters, not because of me, had announced about 2 months ago that she was going vegan because a friend of hers had gone vegan, and she, somebody that she really likes. So, but it's vegan, it's not necessarily whole food plant-based. And she's found it a little bit strenuous. Now she's 14. My other granddaughter is 16. So they're, not really young anymore, but and the older one has no interest in doing this. My daughter-in-law tries really hard to her, she comes from a big family and they all love to cook a lot and they get together a lot. And she tries to do healthy stuff, but when you open up her pantry, it's all the, you know, the cookies and crackers and, you know, pretzels and chips and all of that kind of stuff. And then, I don't know, she makes an effort. She definitely does make an effort to get the kids eating more vegetables and more fruit. But, you know, I don't know that she's all that convinced. I will say that when we have family gatherings, she always tries to make sure that there's something that's prepared that she knows that I can eat. So she'll make the like mashed potatoes with a plant milk and no added butter. Everybody else is eating the regular potatoes, but she, you know, she does keep me in mind. And when I go to events and everything, I always bring plenty to share. Not that anybody will eat my stuff, but sometimes they'll try a little bit. That's good. But, you know, I'm well taken care of when I go to family events.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah, it helps to have family who at least maybe they don't eat the same way, but are willing to support your decision.
Right,
Because
exactly.
my family does as well.
Yeah,
And it
absolutely.
is helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, we hear stories of people who actually get undermined by their family, which is a whole
yeah.
nother issue, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, thankfully you guys don't have that to worry about.
Not at
How
all.
does it work at your family, John? Do you have support or people just say, that's just John, he's quirky, we're not worrying about him, he does what he does?
Yeah, they let me do my own thing, and that's fine. They eat what they want to eat, and I usually bring, like Judi says, I'll bring either something for myself or I have to bring a dish anyway, so I'm assigned the vegetable dish. So I'll bring a vegetable dish that isn't made with cream of mushroom soup and French's onions,
Yeah.
right? Which
Those I do.
everyone loves.
What did you
So
say?
yeah, so, and usually they like it, you know, and
Yeah.
that's really the key. It shouldn't matter whether it's how it was prepared as long as it's tasty. So that's the key. If you can make it tasty without having all that, shall we say, crap in it,
Yeah.
all the
Calorie
better.
rich and processed, as Jeff Novick
Yeah.
says. Mhm.
Calorie rich and processed. Yes.
Yeah,
is what crap stands
CRAP.
for.
Yep.
Yes.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me, Carrie,
Yeah.
what kind of herbs do you use? What are your
Hmm.
favorites?
I would say like paprika and cumin. I make a mixture. One of my favorite things is I make a mixture of, I don't even remember what all goes into it, but there's probably like nutritional yeast and paprika and I think some celery, salt, and a bunch of like garlic and onion powder. And I make that as my like vegetable stock. It's kind of like a spice
Mhm.
mixture, and I just add it to whatever water I want instead of buying like liquid broth or stock. And I love that.
What a great idea.
Yeah, it's a space saver, so you don't have to buy all of the broth. And then always too, I would find that if I bought liquid broth, I would more so back then when I was transitioning to plant-based, probably wouldn't use it until it went bad. I think now that probably wouldn't be an issue, but it's so much easier with the spice mixture because you can make it and store it for however long you need. I make a big batch and I always have it on hand.
I find too when
What do you guys
buy-
use to replace oil? What's your oil replacements? Because typically I'm just using broth as a replacement.
Yeah,
or
I don't know that I really notice not using oil as much. For like cook or for sauteing, I would use water or broth, but for roasting, I don't really feel like for certain things it's not necessary. I'll just stick them in the oven. But depending on what you're making, I know you've said it's hard to roast certain
Yeah,
things without oil.
Yeah, I have a hard time with that.
Yeah.
I do.
And for baking, I mean, there's replacements that you can use as well. But yeah, I don't miss it as much as I thought that I might.
What do you use, John?
the same thing, broth.
Yeah.
Typically I'll use broth or water, just to, I guess the question is, what's the purpose of oil? If it's to add flavor, it really doesn't add much flavor. It
Yeah,
really just keeps it from burning.
yeah,
And
I
Maybe
think
some
oil,
texture as well.
oil, yeah, adds a certain
yeah,
texture,
yeah,
but it also is, it calls on our very primitive need for calories, that we're always seeking out calories, right? For the last, I don't know,
Right.
however long Homo hominids have been around, right? We've been looking for calories. So
right.
fats are always something that we're happy about, generally speaking, just by nature of how we developed over the eons. That's
Mhm.
what calls to us, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I think it's part of, like, it turns into that pleasure, that satiety. That when I was in nursing school, there was this, I remember sitting in a nutrition class, for what it was worth, because we didn't really get nutrition education in nursing school. But I remember the instructor saying, yes, that oils or fat, adds to the satiety value of the food. And you just won't feel satisfied if there's no fat or oil in the food. A myth that they have perpetuated for a long time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if there was one thing that you would say to our audience members, maybe they're thinking about transitioning to a plant-based diet for them or their family, or maybe they think it's overwhelming to consider trying to transition to something like this, what is one piece of advice you would give them, and one step that they could take now to start transitioning or make that a little easier?
I think one of the things that really struck me when I made the change was when I thought about what it was going to be like to make this change, I had amplified in my own mind how difficult I thought it was going to be.
Mm.
And it turned out to be magnitudes less difficult, even for me as a non-cook, okay? Because, well, however, it was still so much easier than I thought it was going to be when I was thinking about making this switch. And I think it's also important I understand people have different styles. Not everybody is going to flip the switch and go 180 like I did. But the fact of the matter is, especially if you've got health issues involved, the more dramatic the switch that you make towards a whole food, plant-based, no oil way of eating, the more dramatic your body's responses are going to be. And obviously, if you're taking medication for diabetes or for high blood pressure, there are some things that you really need to do that with some guidance so that you don't throw yourself into some sort of like a medical crisis and everything by making these dramatic changes, because the changes can happen very, very quickly, especially when it comes to diabetes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think some people want to do it slowly and then they complain that they're not really seeing any results. Well, when you do it really, the smaller your change, the less impact you're going to wind up seeing. And the other thing is dairy, like John said, that's a killer. People don't realize, we've been so brainwashed with this, got milk and the white mustache and how important that is and everything. Every doctor that is in the plant-based world that I've heard talk about the subject, when they're asked, what is the one thing that you could do that will have the greatest impact on somebody's health? It's to eliminate dairy products. And that means not just milk, but cheese and yogurt and all that, ice cream, biggie, all of that stuff too.
So what about you, John?
I think you've heard it from a bunch of people, and I'll echo what they're saying. If you do nothing else, cut out the dairy. Cut out the dairy. Because I don't think my experience is very unique. I think my experience is rather common. And I think some of the research we've seen shows 70% of people have some form of lactose intolerance. I think I've seen stats that high. And I believe if it's anything like my experience, you will feel so much better. And it's not enough to just cut out the dairy and the cheese and the yogurt. You got to read the label because it's in everything. So if you see, is it whey the same as dairy? Yeah. So, you You got to read the stuff. And the second thing I would tell people to do is cut out the sugary drinks. That was very easy for me. I just substitute sparkling water with a little splash of fruit juice if I want some flavor in it. So,
Yeah.
nope. Those are the two things. And then the other thing I would say is if you want to get the full benefits, you've got to cook as many meals for yourself as you can. The more you dine out, you just don't know what they're doing. And that stuff, even the best vegetarian restaurant, it's still going to have oil in it. It's still probably going to have, you don't know what it's going to have in it. That's the problem. If you really want to control over it, you've got to take control. And that's probably the most difficult part. The easiest part is cut out the dairy.
Yeah. Those are really good suggestions. Really,
Yeah.
really good. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. People who are listening should be able to take something from what you've just offered.
Mhm.
That's super valuable. Thanks. I have one other question before we go to the next other question. So if you were able to go back and advise your younger child self on something about food, or we could go as big as life in general, but this podcast tends to focus on food. What would you tell your younger self, maybe at somewhere between age 10 and 12? And you knew you would listen. That would be the other part.
Well, for me, I think it's just, we take it when we're young, we take it for granted that, you look at people around you and you see how older people look, how they move, how they are in the world, and you think, well, that's them. And you look at yourself and you're young and you're healthy and your skin is nice and taut and you've got muscles and all of that kind of good stuff. And you think, well, that's them. That's not me. And the reality is that we have a lot more control over what that future us is going to be than I think most people have a clue about.
Mm.
And I think that just telling that younger Judi, what you do now is going to determine whether you are looking like that healthy person, or if you're going to be able to move like that athletic person, or if you're going to be, sedentary, aching all over and not able to move. There's that 60-second video with the last 10 years. What did your last 10 years look like on YouTube? That's one of my very, very favorite videos, because and maybe we can link that to the show notes at the end of this video.
Definitely.
Because it has two people, the same person with different futures, and it makes a really, really poignant point about we have a lot more control over what that last 10 years looks like. We don't want to live to be 100 if it means living incapacitated and sore and achy and not able to do the things that we love and enjoy doing. We want to live, what does they say? I want to live as not just a long life, but a healthy long life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's right. Definitely. John?
Yeah, I would say you really got to challenge a lot of the long held notions that have been fed to you over the years, such as, dairy builds strong bones. And that doesn't go for just, what we consider the bad guys. Some of our own notions about what vegetables can and cannot do. I think we have to look at ourselves as well. But don't believe everything you're fed, because the guys that have a lot of money are spending a lot of money to misinform you.
So if people want to find or get in touch with both of you and find out what you're doing, how can they get into contact with you?
Well, for me, that's really easy, because pretty much everything that's on PBNM, any email from any of those pages or whatever, that comes to me. So I'm easy.
Yeah, and if you want to post my email on the podcast, that's fine. Email is the best way to reach me. Happy to help anybody if they have questions about going plant-based.
Okay, we
Perfect.
will put that in the show notes as well.
Yes.
Great. Well, I think that about wraps it up.
Mhm.
Anything else you want to say? Parting comments?
we have a health industry that doesn't care about food and a food industry that doesn't care about health. And it's time that we all took our own mantle and took back control of our health. Then we wouldn't need to worry about the trillions we're spending on healthcare, or actually disease maintenance. It's not healthcare, it's disease maintenance.
Mhm.
So yeah.
So true.
Yes.
So true. Right.
Yeah, I'm astounded that, we've talked about the pandemic for the last 2 years, but there's been a pandemic going on for a generation now where we're losing 700,000 people a year due to heart disease and diabetes. And the only reason there's not more being done about it is because when I walk in a room and cough on you, I'm not going to give you diabetes or heart disease, right? If that worked that way, then there'd be a lot more attention. So this is self-inflicted with the aid of a lot of big industries. So
Yes.
really, it's not going to change. They have us outspent, outmanned. It's going to be a grassroots thing, and we're already seeing the seeds of change sprouting here, right? And
Yes,
it's going to
they are.
continue to sprout. And there's going to come a point where it's going to make more sense for us to just eat the food that we're feeding to the cattle that we're eating than to eat all the animals. And the people and the world will be a better place for it.
Yes.
Absolutely. Great parting comments. Thank you both so much for your time and your wisdom and
Thanks.
your experience. Thanks for sharing. Yes.
Great conversation.
Yeah, terrific. So we will see you soon for sure, maybe at the next board meeting.
Yep.
All right, you
I've
guys.
got gifts for you when we do meet in person. I do have some gifts for you when we meet in person.
Oh, well, we better make this happen soon.
Yes.
Yes.
Don't get too excited. I didn't say they were spectacular. I just said they were good.
Anything is good. It would be just good to see people face to face,
Yes.
I'm all good for hugs.
Yes,
So,
yes,
yeah, definitely.
like this.
Yes, right. Okay. 6 Million Seeds is made possible by the generosity of Bruno Chiropractic, Acme Construction Metals, EXP Realty, and Deck It Out Builders. We thank you for your support.